Hello, dear listener. I have something truly special to share. It's an exclusive invitation to join me in Mexico for an intimate and luxurious 3-day retreat along the beautiful Pacific coast of Zihuatanejo, taking place the weekend of the spring equinox, March 18th through the 20th. There's also an optional day to stay through the 21st for some special ceremonies that are happening in the area for the equinox. But the retreat itself is the 18th through the 20th, really an opportunity not to be missed. And I'm offering one lucky listener a discounted ticket on this weekend that I've just been loving into being actually for several years now as COVID and, everything. But when we conceived of building this place, our home down here, it's really what we envisioned, bringing people down here for retreats, for trainings, because we felt and we knew that this space was special. And as people keep coming down and we keep getting the feedback, how magical it is, we want to share it in a really intentional way. Be working with the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, the metaphors of the season. We'll set sight on a new vision for our mothering journey and creating a deeper connection to self and Mother Nature. So to win a discounted ticket, rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts. Screenshot it and DM it to me on Instagram at Dr. Gertrude Lyons. And remember, the most important thing to mother is yourself. Give yourself permission to take a retreat this year. And besides, who said mothers can't go on a spring break? I'll see you there.
This is a Soulfire production. Welcome to Mother. No, it's Mother. Welcome to Mother, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way you never have before, but have always needed. It's time we rewrite the Mother Code. Hi, and welcome to episode 22 of Mother, Rewriting the Mother Code with me, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. So this episode is what I hope is the first of many. And it's an episode with my husband, Rich Lyons. I'm super excited. And it was like a little date. Like we just had a little mini date together and get to share with all you aspects of our relationship. The focus of this one for us was how to mother your relationship and ways that we feel like we've done that and take you somewhat on our journey as a couple. Things that, we addressed, things that we feel like have made it work, but has also been the work of our couple. So I hope you enjoy. I also hope you resonate with and learn from. We don't by any means have a perfect marriage because there's no such thing, but we're very grateful for the guidance and work we've done along the way to now be on the other side of kids and deepening and seeing some of the best years ahead for us. So very excited. And like I said, this will be the first of many. And at the end, we share a couple tips. We list some ways, but then also something that you can do today and start in your relationships in deepening them. Without further ado, here we go. Well, hello.
Hello.
This is fun. We get to do a podcast together.
Wow.
I know. Well, we've talked about this for a while, and here we are. So what we envisioned in talking about, because we have lots to share about relationship and marriage and what it takes, but we want to at least get started in a conversation sharing about our relationship and how we mother our relationship. Since that is the name of my podcast, Mother, and we mother all things in our lives. And one of the things I've mothered, but we mothered together, is our relationship. So what would you say about that, just off the top of your head?
Well, we met at work, if I go back to the beginning, And we were friends first. So I think that was an important aspect of our relationship and mothering our relationship. I mean, we worked together. We were part of a group of young consultants just out of college. And I think that, being friends first before we started dating, I think was a good start to our relationship for sure.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And we didn't really notice each other. I mean, we were part of this friend group, like you said, and we were all young and out of college and, new in the workforce. And I mean, I know I had it wired in me that I was going to get married at some point, and I don't know that I was consciously looking for a husband at that moment. But when we have gone back and looked at both kind of the beautiful things that attracted to each other, but also some of these more unconscious contracts that were there for us when we first started. So on the beautiful side, you're this amazing, handsome man's man, really smart, really intelligent. And for me, then on the more unconscious, looking for security side, I knew that you had huge potential, but potential to create a secure life for me. And you also already had family money, and that was attractive. So there were definitely kind of all of those forces that I wasn't maybe aware of. I definitely wasn't aware of all those consciously at the time. But
Sure. And I think you were very pretty, so that was attractive. But you were also very alive. And I thought I was marrying, or I would, eventually, obviously, we got married, but I wanted to capture that aliveness. I didn't necessarily know about creating it for myself. And that wasn't part of my vision, I don't think, initially. But I think I wanted to kind of, capture that aliveness and have it because you had it. So, well, if I dated you, well, then I would have more aliveness in my life.
Yeah. No, and as you're saying that, it's kind of bringing up for me how, I mentioned about the security and the solidity, but also I was marrying the masculine, rather than fully honoring it within myself, that I figured, I would, and I came from I'm kind of skipping around here, but, you also fit the bill of, someone I could depend on, but also that would have a dependence side of it that we ended up working on, still are, but looking at that aspect of how we marry the parts of ourselves that we don't know we're yearning for, but we are, and kind of think that we can just marry it. But then we realize, and we can talk some about our growth journey that started together to realize oh, you're there to actually represent what I need to develop in myself. Right. And that's been a huge journey.
And similarly, I was marrying the feminine. I didn't have a vision of creating that within myself and accepting my own femininity, to go hand in hand with being masculine as well. So I think, as we dated and then got more serious, I think that's when you dragged me in to see Dr. Bob Wright, and we decided, to start our growth work, if, to use that word. But it was literally, you were working for, Stan Smith, and at that time he was going through a divorce, and we just got engaged, and then you came home and said, hey, I was talking to Stan, and he said the best thing we could do for our relationship was to work on our communication, and so we should go see his friend Dr. Bob Wright. And I was like, no effing way. I'm like, why would I do that? I remember thinking and not really trusting you and thinking, you must have secrets. There must be skeletons in the closet that you can't tell me. So why don't you just tell me? And just being very scared, really. Maybe I wouldn't have said it at the time, but scared and unsure, why would we do this? We're young, we're on top of our game, everything's great. Why would we go talk to someone?
Yeah, no, it's such a pinnacle point in our lives and our relationship, right? When he said that, I had never thought about, going to a couples counselor or doing coaching or therapy, but there was something that resonated when he said it about, go talk about what it means to get married. And, that's when I think the first inkling of oh, well, gosh, I guess nobody really did train. You don't get any training in that. And when we looked at, both of our parents' marriages, which we then later explored in much more depth. But just the fact that it opened up a space to look at like, oh, my parents were soon to be divorced. Your parents were twice divorced. There's alcoholism on both sides of the family. And if I looked at my parents, it wasn't the model relationship. And then where else would we have, what else were we to go on? Because that was what was wired in us.
Well, you just get married and then you live happily ever after.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you watch the movies, I mean, of course. So you don't really think about what happens after the wedding. You just get married and then everything works itself out.
Exactly. Because you had it all.
It doesn't.
Right.
If you looked at my parents and your parents after as well. So I think, it was interesting because, going in with, being very skeptical, but then being, surprised, I guess, and shocked by Dr. Bob and his insights and really then having a focus, I guess, for us, like let's focus on our wedding as our first act together, like the first thing, our first project as a married couple. And that was very appealing to me, like something that we could focus on together. Like, how do we want our wedding to be? And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And why do we have guests there? Why do you invite people? And what readings do you want? And what music do you want? Like things that I thought you just kind of mailed it in, like,
right.
And you didn't really think about. And I think part of the pivotal moment for me that still resonates was him asking me, what I want. Rich, what do you want for the wedding? What would make you happy? And I thought, and then I said, well, if Gertrude's happy, then I'll be happy. He's like, Rich, like, no, what do you want? What do you want? I thought again, really hard. I'm thinking really hard here. I'm like, well, if all the guests have fun and if Gertrude has fun, then I'll have fun. So really just not being in touch with my wants. It was all outside and on other people. And obviously that started a huge journey for both of us in, social and emotional intelligence and just growth work and opening up a lot and opening up our relationship. And I would have never guessed that starting with that would, so much impact our relationship together.
Yeah. Wow. So many memories and thoughts, coming to the surface as you're sharing that. And I feel actually like really touched and moved and so grateful, for this journey. And I'm thinking about it too, as you were saying that, Dr. Wright helped us create a vision, right? Like that's the first thing you said. If you, have a vision for your marriage and your relationship, we're like, well, what's that? Like everything you said. And that was part of it. You're looking at what you wanted. What's the vision for your relationship so that you can, when you have that, it's a steady place that you can weather the storms, that were to come inevitably. But we didn't, of course, wanted to believe maybe, the happily ever after still. But also how a wedding stirs up so much unfinished business, right? So that was our first. And, things came like flooding, right to the surface when
I remember all kinds
right?
of things. Yeah, right.
I know, you're like,
I remember your aunt fell down, my dad got drunk and lost, literally at our wedding. My stepmom's like, have you seen your dad? I'm like, no, not really my time to watch him, and someone finds him like passed out in a bush. So, I mean, obviously a lot of things I think came up through the process too. I mean, there was a lot of things we were dealing with. I remember with your mom, and me feeling like this is our wedding, not your mom's wedding, and having some fights with your mom and fights that at that time you weren't having with her, which was very interesting around, bridesmaids dresses and all kinds of, crazy things.
Like the typical things for a wedding that unless you've opened up a space to look at those and the conflict or the, when you said that about you were having the fights for me and, I had a very enmeshed relationship with my mom, very dependent on her. And, if we had not started growth work, it would have been her wedding, and that we would have attended. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful for you stepping in there to start the work that I would then need to do. But it called that so much to the surface that it became pretty obvious. And, something else Dr. Wright said along the way is like, okay, you get married and that day is like the start of getting married. Right. Like that's like kind of your kickoff celebration, right?
Sure.
And then you're not really married for like 3 to 5 years of real work on yourselves. And I think my work came right to the surface around my mom and family relationships. So I went, kind of like jumped right into like,
yeah, you
deeper
were very
growth
honest.
work.
I think you jumped right in and started working on that before we even got married. And I was kind of like, I'm good. I'm still a little, weary and, I'm not sure, so as you jumped in and you're doing assignments and I watched you start to change. I watched you actually, do these weekly assignments and become stronger and become more and more like, and become more alive, I think, than even you were before, and start to clear things out of the way. Then I became afraid, like, wait a second, if she keeps growing and I'm not growing, that's not going to work out. Like you hear so many times about couples, have children and then they focus on the children, but they forget the couple and they forget each other. And then all of a sudden the children leave and then they divorce, which is exactly what happened with your parents.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat, getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if that idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons, DrGertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat.
Yeah, no. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, that was, that point in my life where that all made sense, right? And just kind of leap of faith and jumping in. And I kind of look back on it. Sometimes I'm so grateful again that you joined the journey, because I didn't wait, and I didn't wait to see if you were going to keep going. I was very glad I didn't have to face some, choice point where if you had said, nope, you go do that thing, I'm not, because
well, it kind of happened in phases, right?
Yeah.
I think part of it was, I'm competitive, but some of it was very fear-based, and, fear of being abandoned, fear, my parents divorced. So I think I lived with this core belief of abandonment. Like, oh my gosh, like, is she going to leave me? I better jump in, and really start doing my growth work and start, learning really and growing and changing, so we could change together, so we could grow together. And I think that was very, very important. And it led to so many different things, right? Like when you were talking about our families and alcoholism, and, when we looked at, our genograms and looked at like everything that was colliding from my side of the family and with all the things that were colliding with your side of the family, like we never even thought about that. But to look and think about what are the strengths on my side that I'm bringing? What are the strengths on your side? And it's like hereditary, like generation after generation is coming together, but then also looking at the weaknesses, looking at the darkness and the light. And how do we mitigate the darkness, but how do we grow the light? And then choose that together was I think the coolest thing. Like, wait a second, it's our marriage and we can choose together. How are we going to combine these two diverse families into what is our marriage? And we have choice, so to be more aware and conscious and then be able to choose, what do we want our marriage to be like? And I think, a major event for us was around addictions and was around alcoholism, and I think that was something very early on that we started looking at and partnering around. And I think you led the way a lot, kind of in experimenting with your drinking, then I started experimenting with my drinking, trying not to drink or trying to have one drink and just looking at what came up and all these beliefs like, well, I can't have fun if I'm not drinking. I people won't like me if I'm not drinking. And just that urge to, like, as soon as you walk in the bar, have a drink and take the edge off. Or as soon as you walk in a party, have a drink right away, take the edge off. But what's wrong with the edge?
Right.
And what's wrong with that aliveness, and keep that aliveness. And I think that was a big journey for us to eventually then choose to stop drinking and to say, we're going to stop this addiction, in this generation. Like, you and I are going to consciously choose to live a more conscious life and not to use alcohol the way I was using it, which was to avoid feelings.
Yeah, no, it is. It's, I think, one of the best decisions, that we ever
100%.
made, 100%, that carried through every aspect then, right? And, because we were looking at that in addition to other ways that kind of kept us from not connecting or getting deeper. And I mean, the alcohol was a big one, right? If you are always taking that edge off, then we're not fully conscious.
You can lie and say, oh, but we were so alive, we're drunk and we're crazy.
Right. And I'm uninhibited and da-da-da. But no, I'm not there.
But then looking at how I unconsciously expressed my anger and picked fights when I was drunk. And you always had an excuse, which is crazy. That society gives you an excuse. Oh, don't worry, you were drunk.
Yeah, it's always
so you
okay.
get a total pass.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
So I think that was a big piece of us choosing to live a more conscious life. So it wasn't, initially it was just like stop drinking.
Right.
But then it kind of merged into how do we lead a more conscious life together and how do we feel together? And I think that's the social and emotional intelligence, like to be self-aware, to know our feelings, to be able to manage those feelings, to choose then to be in relationship together and have empathy for each other, and really come together.
Yeah. No, I'm so grateful. And I'm thinking about, the alcohol was the big one, but we also got rid of our TV, because we saw that was, early, and that was the only screen at the time that, because we were, we're married pre the internet and pre really personal computers. So TV was the big thing, but we found ourselves like just zoning out in front of the television. So, and this was, through Dr. Judith Wright's work on conscious living and soft addictions that we, went to trainings on and did ongoing work with, because this isn't easy. It isn't like you just like stop drinking. Like you have to work on yourself because there were deeper yearnings and hungers that we had that all of that was covering up. And the TV was, I think, probably our other biggest one.
Well, and Dr. Judith talks about the math of more, and we had to add other things in to start crowding out, some of those other things that were crutches that we went to that would then, it's kind of like we would get into this cycle of bad decisions, like stay up late and watch TV all night and then be behind at work and then be grumpy the next day and then, make sure that you go drink coffee. I mean, just, you get into these cycles instead of what can we do that's more nourishing and how can we, as a couple and as each other, express our feelings, and be more nourished instead of avoid feelings.
Yeah, and I want to go back to, well, it's all kind of related, right? Like this feelings part, that's, the thing that you said you wanted and saw in me But then when I started showing them, you were just right ready to like shut them down, right? And then this masculine that I was wanting in you, when then I just felt like you were just overly aggressive and I wanted to shut your masculine down. So I feel like that's been a big part of our journey too, is, you know, you moving more into your being because you're such a doer and, you know, huge achiever and, you know, use your brains and all that in such a powerful way, leaving your being behind. I can be more being and feminine and not do, right? So that's been so much of our journey.
Absolutely.
Also that I wanted to name.
And I think it kind of, you know, fit in with our decision that we knew we wanted to have children, but we were going to wait, you know, and let's be married first, you know, and let's spend time together and let's set a solid foundation for our couple. And I think that choice that our couple is the core of our family, whether we have children or not, we are a family.
Huge, huge. Well, I think I'm going to save the whole children and conception and all that for another episode, because that's totally an episode in itself. You know, but this one, I think about the beginnings of our relationship and naming the things that we worked on and the things that worked for us, because we're, you know, we didn't reach some pinnacle and then, you know, realize
no, we're
it was
still working on it.
Huge. And I think we hit plateaus for sure, you know, kind of got comfortable. And then when, especially during the child rearing times and you raising your business and, you know, we definitely separated at some degree and we'll talk about that again in another one. But, you know, I think we're so aware now of the journey, you know, of it all. But
well, I think, you know, if you go back to our wedding vows, you know, partners, lovers, and best friends, right? So I think we kind of really helped, like we became, you know, really good partner. Like we were able to do projects together and we were very good at doing, you know, and doing things. You know, and we loved each other, I think, dearly, and our love continues to grow. But I think we've really worked on the best friends part. Yeah. Like, and that's something, you know, when you talk about best friends, it's something we continue to work on as a couple. What does it mean to be best friends? I mean, we worked on no secrets as an example, like not having secrets from each other. We worked on things like not spending over a certain amount of money without talking to the other person about it. I mean, just a lot of things that, you know, when you think about, can I really be best friends with my wife?
Yeah, I know. I think that's, and now on the other side of kids gone and that's, you know, what we're really fostering and working on at the moment. So if we were to summarize for our listeners of this podcast, some of the things that, you know, what is it, the elements of a successful relationship that we're talking about here?
Well, I think we mentioned a lot of things, but, you know, if I go back to what pissed me off when Stan said, you know, work on your communication, I do think communication is critical, but that's almost too simple. Like it's not like you just talk, which is important. You know, we spend a lot of time just sharing with each other and even doing 5 minute, you know, sharing with each other and just listening. But I think communication means a lot of things. It means me being aware of my feelings so I can share them with you. That's communication. Yeah. You know, me being responsible with my fear, with my hurt, with my anger, so that you can hear it, you know, and I think we're still working on that. But I think that piece of communication and social emotional intelligence kind of wrapped together, I think is one really key element.
Yeah. And I think you said this, but to underline that the communicating is at so many levels, right? And we talked about, you know, getting things out of the way that allowed us to share more of our deeper yearnings and our deeper wants. And that's very vulnerable. So we had to work through a lot to communicate in a more revealing, and we're still working on that, you know, vulnerable way. So communication's big.
And I think part of the communication too, and maybe it's a separate category, is learning how to fight. I mean, we were like the Ken and Barbie, the look good. We never wanted to fight.
We had an assignment to pick fights, like to pick over 100%. Fights with each other.
And that's what I mean. But I think, you know, Bob, you know, obviously, you know, Heart of the Fight, you know, Dr. Bob and Dr. Judith have a book out, but really seeing if we weren't fighting, something was wrong. Yeah. Not if we were fighting, something was wrong. It was because we weren't fighting, something was wrong. And we needed to be fighting for something and fighting for something that we wanted. And, you know, you mentioned yearnings and coming back to wanting something, and then how important it was to be able to negotiate that within our relationship. So I think learning to fight has been critical as well. And maybe that fits under communication, but maybe because it was so important, it's a separate, own topic.
And I think this, because this is all of what we're talking about, but I think to name, for a successful relationship, that you really do, you do need to do some personal growth work.
Yeah.
You can have an okay relationship or kind of get by, but without these skills and training, none of us got this in our upbringings, no one, and even us. And we knew more in raising our daughters. There's still huge gaps. We maybe created an opening, but every family, no matter how, synchronized or there's so much more.
Yeah.
And our only model was our parents.
We didn't have a good model, I guess is the key, so to be able to have a vision beyond what we had seen.
Right.
We both grew up with, dysfunctional relationships that we were witnessing with our parents that ended in divorce. And so how are we then supposed to just magically create a beautiful relationship that wasn't going to end that way? And I think without the personal growth work and without the things that we have done, I think we would have ended up on that same path. We saw
100%.
a trajectory.
We know we would have.
And we shifted off of it. And, and thank God for that. And, thank, Dr. Bob and Dr. Judith, because without that help, we were headed down a crash course, basically.
100%. Yeah, I always, a ways into our marriage and doing work, I said, that we would either have gotten divorced somewhere, along the way, or we would have kind of stuck it out, separate lives, a whole myriad of unconscious things going on, and then divorced after the kids were gone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we've mentioned a few things. There's probably, other things like getting support. Yeah. We've been in a couples group for a long time, giving support, because then I think you even learn things more when you teach things, so we support other couples, and we've supported, younger couples, to be better than we are. Right. To learn from our mistakes and start younger. So I think that's something else, like giving back has been, I think, another important element of our relationship. But I think to underline that, put the couple first. And it's interesting because maybe we need to even separate that out, because we did our individual work and then brought it into the couple. So it was almost like you have to put yourself first as an individual, so then you can be a couple. Right. So it wasn't like we just went in to do couples work. We did our own work. We grew and then came together as a couple, as two strong individuals.
Yep. Yeah. Right on. And I think we can end there, but let's end with, you mentioned this, but I think as an assignment for couples out there, or just, people in relationship with others that want to get closer to them. The discipline that we've been doing for a while, that I share in all the couples that I coach and everything. And it's surprising how simple it is. And at the same time, the consistency of it allows us
difficult to do over and over and over, for sure.
Do you want to say what it is?
Yeah. So every day, just take 5 minutes each to talk non-logistically, I think is the key. Because especially it's easy to talk about logistics, and especially if you have children, then for sure you can talk about logistics, but to literally talk for 5 minutes, the other person just listens, doesn't get to respond, and just talk about your feelings, what's happening with you, what you're thinking about, how your day was, depending on when you're talking about it, how your day's going to be, things you're worried about, but just talk for 5 minutes, the other person listens, and then you switch and you get to listen, and the other person gets to talk. And even though it sounds easy, 5 minutes, that's 10 minutes every day. To create that discipline will make a huge difference, I promise.
And I'd be excited to hear any of you that take it on, what you learn and explore. And there is one guideline or rule, and that is in that 5 minutes, you're not allowed to talk about the other person.
Yeah, no, you can't be dirty. Like, they don't get to say anything right now, so I can hammer them and tell them how much how terrible they are. No, you get to talk about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm super grateful. I'm actually super grateful for this time that we got to just, share and talk, and I got to be with you and recount our relationship and our life that I'm so, so grateful for.
Well, thanks for having me. I feel very mothered.
I love it. But I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely. Okay. If you ask me, I guess, if I'm allowed back.
I'm sure that will be allowed. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that are going to have a lot of takeaways from this. So yay. Blessings.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother. Subscribe to Mother. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women. Well, actually, everybody, men included. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com. I'll see you next time.